This video explains the differences between the HinksPix Pro and the AlphaPix Evolution CPUs. Now, before we start with the CPUs, let's talk about what these drive, because these devices don't actually control the pixels directly, they use expansion boards. Now, the first board in the Flex expansion board system, which is shared between the two CPU types, is a 16-port SPI board. And this means that we hook pixels directly to these outputs. And this allows us to control up to 16 pixel strings. Now they receive their data through this data port on the back, and power comes in over on this side. Now we do have videos that detail all the minutia of this board and what its functions are. So this is a more centralized board for controlling lots of pixels, typically megatrees and matrix types products. Now the next thing we have is a distributed or long-range differential board, and that is designed, again, with the same data input port, a power port, but what we'll have here is Cat5 connections. And so if we look at that, we can see they're Cat5 connections, and each one of these can control 4 individual strings of pixels. So we can still control the same number of pixels, 16. What the difference here is we're controlling each Cat5 cable from here to here controls 4 cable lights. So if we plug a Cat5 cable in here, we can go hundreds of feet between where the controller and the CPU are located with this differential board and where this inexpensive receiver board are located. So this can control 16 strings just like the other unit. And finally, in the Flex expansion board system is the AC board. Now this AC board controls standard 120 volt lights. So if you have strings of legacy lights like mini lights, C9, C7s, this unit will be able to do that. You can see again, same data port, controller, CPU goes up here. All right, so all these are designed to stack together. So let's show a controller already assembled. Here we can see a controller that is already assembled, and we can see that it's stacked. What we have here is we have an SPI board here at the bottom. Stacked on top of that is a long-range expansion board, and then on top of that is a AlphaPix Evolution CPU. Now you'll notice that we have used 2 of these ports of the 3, so we can stack another if there's physically enough space. Now this is a smaller CG1500 enclosure. Our HC2500 enclosure does allow 3 stacked boards, and we also make specialized custom controllers for customers with many more ports. So let's start talking about the CPUs themselves. All right, let's start with what's in common between these. They're in common are the 3 ports, and you'll see that they all have 3, and they'll see that there's the same holes, which allows them to mount on top of the expansion boards. Now, you'll also note that they both have 2 Cat5 jacks. These are network switch jacks, and they allow you to daisy chain the controller, so you can run your data hardwired into the controller and then back out again. Now, the HinksPix Pro has its data coming out to the side, and the AlphaPix Evolution coming out towards the bottom. Both of those network connections have status indicators on them. All right, now they both have RS-45 ports. This is an older technology, and we have other videos that explain that technology. And it has 1 RS-45 port for the HinksPix Pro and 2 for the AlphaPix Evolution. Now, that is what's in common. We also have on the top the exact same boards for the display. Now, you'll notice these look identical, and that's for a reason. This is allowing us to have inexpensive replacements should you damage the screen or the buttons become disabled in some way. And you can see that that's just simply unscrewing them, popping off that extra board for a very small expense, and we can replace that board if anything is damaged there. And they share the same connections. All right, now let's talk about what is different between these. Now, this HinksPix Pro is really the higher end controller So if you want to equate this to a common other purchase, like a car purchase, this might be the V8 and this is the V6. And of course, we have a higher price in this product with the HinksPix Pro versus the AlphaPix Evolution. So the AlphaPix Evolution at a very basic level is a very general controller. It's a workhorse. It's been around for years. It's very stable, and it works with most basic and typical installations. So if you're feeding data in to this controller from an external source and you need simple basic control of your pixels, and your pixels tend to be the same type of pixels, this is a great low-cost alternative. Now, let's go through some of the differences here. First is, this unit does have fan control. It has a fan on the side for PWM control. You feed in power here, and you can control it through the software and turn the fan on and off. Now, that said, we generally actually don't recommend fans in controller housings because the fans actually tend to suck in a lot of problems like moisture, bugs, dust, other things. But it does have that ability. The HinksPix Pro does not have a fan control. As I mentioned, there are two RS-45s on the AlphaPix Evolution, one on the HinksPix Pro. They again all have 3 connections. They all have the same exact screen size and the same buttons. Now, this is where it starts to really diverge. This jack right over here is for this. This is an optional and the only one in the industry FM transmitter built into a controller. It's the only unit in the entire industry that has an FCC certified output. What does that mean? It means if you upload your sequences, and we'll talk about that in a moment, to your controller and are playing them from the controller, simply connecting this to the unit allows you to transmit FM audio. So you can act like a regular radio station. So people coming by and viewing the display in a car are able to watch that show. Now this also does have an audio output, but this jack is also incorporated if you choose not to purchase the FM transmitter into the controller. So it does have an 1/8 inch line out. Now you do need amplified speakers for this. So this is equivalent to the output you would have on a typical stereo. All right, so that's what that jack is for. This is an optional item and only necessary if you're FM transmitting. You can use FM transmitting through other mains. All right, now the next thing you have here is you have a battery, and this is a battery backup because this controller maintains a real-time clock, which it has on board, as where the AlphaPix Evolution has no clock. And there's a good reason for that. You need a clock because the HinksPix Pro has the ability to store and play sequences directly from the controller. Hence, this is why we have an SD card. So here we have a mini SD card, and you put your SD card in there, and sequences can be uploaded into the controller and stored on that SD card. Now that offers all kinds of options. Now within that realm of storing and playing sequences from your card, you have 2 options. One is you can use sequences that are already sequenced and ready to go from EasyLights.com. They provide sequences that will download. So if you're familiar with your phone and downloading apps or songs from a store like Apple Play or Google, Android, that kind of thing, you can download those from EasyLights.com into the controller, and they will be stored directly onto this SD card. Now you also have an option, if you are using X-Light's sequencing software, to take your sequences, run them through this converter that's available at no charge, and upload them to the controller, and then they play on the controller. And this controller also has the ability to control other controllers. So it is possible to control this controller, a HolidayCoro AlphaPix Evolution, from the HinksPix Pro. All right, so when you're doing that, of course, you need the ability to be able to schedule shows because you have to select when to start and stop those shows. And hence, this is why we have a battery on board. All right, and We also have Wi-Fi in this unit. Now, Wi-Fi is designed for lower bandwidth solutions. It's not intended for full maximum use in terms of powering all the pixels at one time. So typically it's used in one of two ways. Either one, to access the web interface and configure the controller, for example, from a smartphone or from your laptop or from inside the house, or to be able to use it in a multiple master-slave arrangement. So if you have multiple HinksPix Pros, they can all communicate together, they can all have a copy of the same sequence stored on their SD card, and then one controller is selected as the master, and then all the other slave controllers will stay in sync with the master where the audio and the sequencing is scheduled from. So that can be done over Wi-Fi, which is a very low bandwidth connection. So it is possible to have in a network or a show where you have all HinksPix Pro controllers to be able to have them all in sync with no data wiring at no additional cost. All right, now there's some other features on here. They have status LEDs and some other minor things, and those differ slightly. There's some extra buttons on here, but otherwise, those are the major differences. So, why would you buy the HinksPix Pro over the AlphaPix Evolution? It is because you want to do standalone operation, either with sequencers from EasyLights.com, or you wish to upload your sequences and you are using XLights, the sequencing application. Now, that said, you can also drive these controllers directly from all the common protocols. There is some slight differences there. Both the controllers support E131 or SACN, streaming ACN, or they support ArtNet. And they support those over either multicast or unicast protocols. Now, this controller also supports DDP, which is a newer protocol. It's not as common, but it does support that. Now, it also supports more advanced pixel protocols and more than one pixel protocol per controller. Now, while all HolidayCoro pixels are all 2811 or 1903, which is compatible with each other, that means that this controller can only control one protocol at a time, which again, if you're using all one type of pixel type, 2811, 1903, that type of family, that's not a problem. If you have some unusual arrangement where you need to have 6803 plus 2811 plus another type of protocol, this controller is a better choice. Also, if you need to do complex string manipulation, putting null pixels in multiple places and things like that, where you're doing unique setup and you do not wish to do that in your sequencing software, the HinksPix Pro is a better choice. Now, you can see our other videos on the specifics of configuring the web interfaces on these two controllers so that you can see the differences between them. Now, one last thing is the AlphaPix Evolution is an evolution of the HolidayCoro Classic controller, the AlphaPix Classic. And so if you're used to the web interface on the AlphaPix Classic, it looks identical. The only difference is we have 48 outputs instead of 16 outputs. Now, for more details on all the minutia and very detailed specific options within these controllers, see our web page.